Shri Gurubhyo Namaha students. Welcome to Online Teaching Academy, Ekalaiva. Class 10, History. The name of the lesson is Nationalism in India. The previous lesson, what I have learnt was the rise of nationalism in Europe. Nationalism in Europe is associated with the formation of nation states. But in India, the growth of modern nationalism is intimately connected to the anti-colonial government. In this lesson, we are going to pick up the story from the 1920s and 1930s. We will see what Gandhiji has done and what the Congress has done to stimulate the spirit of nationalism among Indians. Let's get into the lesson. Name of the lesson is Nationalism in India. Let's understand what is nationalism. Nationalism is this feeling of oneness among the people living in a territory. Everybody should feel that this is my country, my brethren, my national flag, my national dress, and this is my place. I won't allow anybody to rule me. This feeling is nationalism. So, in the previous lesson, the last chapter was how nationalism combined with imperialism led to First World War. So, the First World War held between 1914 and 1918. So, the First World War broke out in the year 1914 and it had lot of impacts in India. Socially, economically and politically too. So, we are going to see the impact. The British imposed war expenditure on India. To meet the war expenses, the British imposed the expenditure on the Indians. Income tax was introduced. Custom duties were raised. Essential good prices doubled. By these measures, they were able to accumulate a lot of money. Forced recruitment into the British Army. Many villagers were forced to fight in the First World War to represent Britain. This made many villagers angry. Crop failures happened due to that shortage of food and influenza epidemic also broke out. So, in the year 1921, 12 to 13 million people have lost their lives due to famine and epidemic. So, these were the impacts due to the First World War. So, Gandhi and Satyagraha. So, Gandhiji is coming to India in the year 1915. He introduced a new powerful method of struggle called Satyagraha. What is the idea of Satyagraha? Let us understand. Gandhiji used Satyagraha, a novel method of mass agitation in South Africa in 1915. He had already practiced in South Africa. So, it emphasized the power of truth. Satyagraha means speak only the truth. Emphasize the power of truth and the need to search for the truth. By speaking only the truth, we can make the oppressor to search for the truth because we are speaking only the truth. So, true cause need no physical force. By being non-violent, a Satyagrahi could win the battle by appealing to the conscience of the oppressor. Now, oppressor here it is the British government, British officials. So, they were oppressing us Indians, okay. So, we have to appeal to the conscience of the Britishers by being non-violent and by speaking only the truth, we can make them to search for the truth in us, in our cause, in our battle. So hunger strike, peaceful demonstrations, hartal and non-cooperation with the government are some of the methods of this sort of mass agitation. And Gandhiji organized 3 Satyagrahic movements. He had succeeded in that. Let us see one after the other. In the year 1916, Champaran movement. Champaran is one of the districts of Bihar. So in Bihar, in Champaran, to inspire the peasants to struggle against the oppressive plantation system in Champaran in Bihar, he supported them. The peasants were cultivating indigo against their own wishes. They were forced to cultivate by the British landlords. So this was the oppressive system that was followed. So he supported them for their cause and helped them to struggle against the British landlords. And the next movement was Satyagraha movement was Kedah movement in the year 1917. Kedah is a district in Gujarat. Crop failure and plague epidemic made the life of the farmers miserable in Kedah district of Gujarat. So whenever during the period of Mughals also we can see that whenever there was a monsoon failure or anything, there were some relaxations in paying the revenue. They will reduce the revenue or waive off the revenue, something will be done by the rulers. But here under British, nothing was done. So the peasants had to pay the revenue. So Gandhiji organized Satyagraha by demanding that revenue collection may be relaxed. He wanted some relaxation in the revenue collection. So for that he was supporting them. Last one, in the year 1918, mill workers movement. In Ahmedabad, lot of cotton mills were there, lot of workers were working in the factories. Lengthy hours of working and less wages. For their cause, he supported and he succeeded in that. So, we are going to look at Rowlatt Act 1919. So, before we look into this, in history, there are 3 C's which are very, very important. Cause of an event, consequences of the event and course of the event. So we are going to see an event which is Rowlatt Act, which was passed in the year 1919. Rowlatt Act 1919 was passed through the Imperial Legislative Council. Despite the opposition of the Indian members, there were Indian members, they were opposing for the Rowlatt Act, which was a harsh black act on Indians. So the objective of the act was the repression of political activities. Now we have seen in the previous slide that there were many Satyagraha movements which started to create awareness among the people. So by those movements, people got an idea how they can fight for their own freedom and independence. So alarmed by these activities, the British government started to repress the political activities. So government could detain political prisoners without trial for 2 years. If the government, British government notices any political activities were going on, they can arrest the political activists without asking for any proof or anything. Without trial, they can put them in the prison for 2 years. They cannot be released for 2 years. So Gandhiji wanted non-violent civil disobedience against the unjust laws that would start on April 6. So he wanted to start with the Satyagraha movement against this black harsh act. So how the Rowlatt Satyagraha was initiated? What were the methods they used to go on with this act? Gandhiji organized a non-violent Satyagraha against the Rowlatt Act. He was so clear that the activity should be non-violent. Okay. And a Hartal was organized on 6th April 1919. Hartal means it is a strike. Okay. Rallies were organized, meetings, some sort of meeting, gathering, conventions were organized to enlighten the people about this act and how to object, how to protest against the British government. Shops were closed down. Strikes in railways strikes happened. The workers in the railways, they did not go for their work. That is what strike. Local units organized processions. The people marched on the streets and they were talking about this Rowlatt Act and to protest against the British government. Government's reaction. Now we have seen the cause, that is Rowlatt Act, and we have seen the consequences. Immediately after the Rowlatt Act, how the people protested, how the Satyagraha movement was on, with rallies were organized, Hartal was initiated, shops were closed down. That is the consequence. And what is the reaction from the side of government for these activities of the people? British government got scared of disruption of communication and transport. So British administration decided to clamp down on nationalists. Clamp down means arrest. So they have decided to arrest the political activists. Local leaders were arrested in Amritsar. Satyapal and Saifuddin Kichlu, these two local leaders in Amritsar were arrested. And Gandhi's entry into Delhi was barred. He himself was not allowed to enter into Delhi. Police fired on peaceful procession in Amritsar. A peaceful procession was going. People were marching on the streets and protesting, raising slogans against the British government. Suddenly the police fired on them. So due to that, the mob, the people, those were in the procession, they got provoked. And the mob got provoked and they started attacking the banks, post offices and railway stations. Martial law was imposed and General Dyer took command. Martial law was imposed. Martial law is such a law that the fundamental rights will be restricted. To move about on the street, to gather in public space, all these basic freedom will be curtailed. That is what martial law. And General Dyer took command. Now, so we have seen Rowlatt Act, the cause for Rowlatt Act and the consequence of Rowlatt Act and the cause of Rowlatt Act. This is also a cause, continuation, the sequence. Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, it is an important event in history, Indian history. On 13th April 1919, a large crowd gathered in the enclosed ground of Jallianwala Bagh. It is a place in Amritsar. Some came to protest against the government's new repressive measure. We have seen in the previous slide that Satyapal and Saifuddin Kichlu were arrested. Due to that, some of them have come to protest against that repressive measures. Many villagers came for the Baisakhi fair as they were unaware of the imposition of martial law. Very same day, the Baisakhi fair was happening. Baisakhi is a festival, harvest festival, where a lot of villagers come out of their place and gather in main place and celebrate that festival. So many villagers did not know about the martial law that was imposed by General Dyer, so they came to participate in the Baisakhi fair. So in the enclosed ground, there were many people, some to protest, some came to protest, some for the Baisakhi fair, they have come to that bagh, that is the garden. General Dyer entered the area and blocked the exit points. He closed all the exit points in the garden. Opened fire without warning. He did not caution the people. Suddenly he started firing, shooting, and killed hundreds of people. About 379 people were killed in this. He didn't even know later an account that said that 379 people were killed in this massacre. So Dyer's object. Dyer's object was to produce a moral effect and create terror in the minds of Satyagrahis. He wanted to create a feeling of awe and terror in the minds of Satyagrahis, those who are protesting against the British government. So we are going to see, we have seen the cause and we are into the consequence. The impact of Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Now we can see that the communication was not that jiffy that we have today. The news of Jallianwala Bagh massacre reached the people a little later. So on hearing the Jallianwala Bagh incident, people demonstrated on the street. They gathered on the street, started shouting against the British government. There were strikes, clashes with the police and attacks on government buildings, whichever symbolized British administration that were attacked by the people. The government responded with brutal repression. For these acts of the people, the government responded immediately. How did they respond? Brutal repression, beating harshly, cruelly. Satyagrahis were humiliated and were forced to rub their noses on the ground, crawl on the streets and do salam to all sahibs. Satyagrahis were humiliated. How they were humiliated? To rub their noses on the streets and crawl on the streets and do salam to whichever British official goes that side, whoever passes by that side. Imagine how difficult it would be for the Indians. Almost all the Indians have to do salam, whomever, if they have come across a British official. People were flogged and villages were bombed. People were flogged, beaten, and many villages were bombed. Gujranwala and Lahore, which is in Pakistan now, some of the villages in that territory were bombed. Gandhiji called of the movement as the violence spread. Gandhiji noticed that violence is spreading. He wanted this movement to be non-violent. Now the violence is on. So he called back the movement. Called back the Satyagraha movement. So with this Satyagraha movement, I will close this class today. We will look into the next class with one another movement. Thank you, children. To receive our online lessons, please press the subscribe button and you will receive the latest updates. Thank you.